Yeah, as to the actual number of arahants or numbers of people who have realized the one of the or other of the four levels of enlightenment, then we don't have any statistical database and for things like this. And it's good to remember also that there are certain restrictions in the monk's discipline that prevent monks revealing to anyone other than a fellow monk the full extent or any details of their attainment. So, given the fact that you can't necessarily tell from the outer demeanor, it doesn't mean that they're kind of like the shining, radiant ones, and in fact those are often not the arahants, to tell you the truth. The fact that they're not allowed to reveal their attainments, and the fact that some quite unlikely people have realized. The Buddha said that sometimes monks are like fruits which are rotten on the outside and succulent and juicy and ripe on the inside, meaning that in certain areas of deportment and speech and so on, they may not be very inspiring. So you don't really know. But how do monks know themselves? Well, what happens in forest tradition, Northeast Thailand, is if someone has had some strong meditation experience, or they have some conviction that they have realized something, they would travel and go to visit one of the teachers that they consider to be an arahant. So there is a kind of an agreed number of great teachers who are qualified to be able to say whether one's attainment is genuine or not. And some of these monks, apart from their own attainment, they have psychic powers. They're able to read people's minds, and they can give that kind of analysis. So I think a skeptic might say, well, how do you know that they are really qualified in that way? So is it not a kind of a self-referencing kind of? Yeah, well, I can see that criticism, but you could also apply that to science, where at the higher levels of scientific research, then, well, in the case of Einstein and of theory of relativity, then there was only maybe 2 or 3 people who could understand it, and who could say yes, this is correct. So there is some kind of analogy with the scientific community, where this is to the inner contemplative science. So in Thailand these days, probably the monk who is acknowledged as the leader of the forest Sangha is Ajahn Mahabua, or Longta Mahabua. And most monks would take him as an authority on this. But he, interestingly, in his old age, he's in his 90s now, he's become somewhat of a controversial figure, in that, firstly, monks are allowed to speak about their enlightenment experiences to other monks. And he talks that he gave in the early 60s, particularly, given to small his own monastic community, were recorded and transcribed. So in those talks he relates his own experience leading up to his enlightenment, sometime after his teacher died, up in the northern part of Isan. And those talks were published, and so many non-monks got to know about those. But still, for many, many years, he followed the principle of not talking about these things with lay people. But he made what's really quite a controversial decision some years ago, after almost dying, almost leaving the world. He made a decision to talk about these things directly, because he felt, on balance, that the inspiration and the faith that would arise in people to know that yes, there are arahants, this is possible in this day and age, outweighed the negative consequences that arise, or questions about whether or not it's legally valid, let's say, in terms of the veneer. Now, myself, I have qualms about this, because it seems to me that from what I've seen, it's been a very interesting phenomena, that those people who already had faith in Ajahn Mahabua have even more faith. But many of those people who did not have faith have actually less faith, because it's so deeply embedded in Buddhist culture that enlightened beings don't talk about, don't claim, and often it's out there in the culture that someone who talks about their attainment probably doesn't have any. You see, so I have faith in Ajahn Mahabua myself, but I think it's important that we don't feel that faith in arahants means that we have to be completely uncritical of everything they say and do. I think that we should still be able to say, yeah, I don't agree with that. With this declaration of his enlightenment, I don't see that it's had the positive results that he expected and hoped for, because urban ties who don't have that close contact with the forest tradition and don't have that initial faith, and don't know who Ajahn Mahabua is, maybe, feel there's this old monk who's claiming to be an arahant, and is this right? And so it's a little bit kind of awkward. But having said that, amongst practicing monks and people who are really intent on realizing Nibbana in this life, you just say, well, right here and now, these days, if you believed you were an arahant and you wanted to have someone, who would you go to see? Well, you'd go to see Ajahn Mahabua.